And we're on.
We're on. Good morning and happy World Ocean Day from 7 Clean Seas. It is a balmy 27 degrees here in Singapore, and you've joined us for Wake Up with Tom and Ben on this World Ocean Day. Now, just before we get stuck into Wake Up with Tom and Ben, which is our 9 a.m. slot this morning, we've got an action-packed day today pulled together by Trisha, Head of Communications. And it is full of really exciting talks and even podcasts. So at 9 a.m. SG time, this will be recorded and we will be pushing it out throughout our global market. But at 9 a.m. SG time, you've got Wake Up with Tom and Ben, which is what we've joined out at, which is where you've joined us at the moment. Then at 11 a.m., you'll be sat with myself and Janet Salem from the United Nations UN SCAP, United Nations SCAP, on an interview about rivers and how we clean them and what she's been doing with rivers research and actually space and satellites. So that is a super exciting topic full of really exciting facts and numbers and data. Then we've got a little bit of a break, and at 1 p.m. SG time, this will be kind of, I think, actually a personal milestone for Tom and Oliver, our sustainability specialists, where we will release the Economist podcast, the Economist podcast, which is on how to stop the tide of ocean plastic, which is super, super exciting and a massive milestone for 7 Clean Seas and Tom and Ollie. Then we've got another break, and at 4 p.m., Tom will be sitting down with famous professional Australian road cyclist Tiffany Cromwell on an Instagram live, which they will be going live at 4 p.m. SG time, which is, again, another really exciting interview. And she's a huge activist and also a representative at Blue Coast Brewery. Then at 7 p.m, we get into happy hour. So join us with Trish and Ollie as they try and make waste auditing and the waste consultation side of 7 Clean Seas a little bit exciting. And they'll be having a couple drinks with that as well. So be sure to tune in because that'll be really exciting. Then at 9 p.m. Singapore time, because this week kind of 7 Clean Seas stretches over multiple time zones, Clara over in France will be heading to Monaco. Really exciting, very jealous of her there, to interview Blue Coast Brewery to launch our latest and really exciting partnership, which is a collaboration, which I'm not going to explain on Wake Up with Tom and Ben, but she will explain later as she gets into the Instagram Live. Now, it's been a crazy, crazy year with COVID, plastic production going up and down, the oil prices dropping, and everything kind of in an uproar. But 7 Clean Seas is also going through some changes, some of which you can see here, and the colours that we're wearing as well. But Tom, what are the massive updates and massive changes that we've got from 7 Clean Seas?
Yeah, so what a year. I think, first of all, not just for ourselves at 7 Clean Seas, but I just think for the world, you know. If you go back a year's time, we're in Singapore where we're based and HQ'd, you know, we're a few months into a pretty severe lockdown. And we really didn't know what the future held for us. At that point in time, 7 Clean Seas was about 2 years old, just almost 2 years old. And we were heavily reliant in terms of a revenue stream on corporate social responsibility. Now, of course, corporate social responsibility requires a lot of face time with a lot of people, and that was just impossible during COVID. And, you know, we were genuinely worried that our revenue would dry up, we would run out of money, and we'd have to stop this activity and this mission that we've been driving for kind of seas free from plastic. And essentially, it created a situation where we just had to get creative. I think, like a lot of organizations out there, we had to look at what we've got. And Ben and myself literally spent the entire lockdown just picking up the phone and speaking to absolutely everybody that would listen to us, just trying to find synergies, people that still have capacity to look at projects like what we're looking at.
I'm sorry if we were really annoying throughout that period.
Yeah, well, yes and no, because it worked. So, in terms of our goal at that point, you know, our goal was really simple. It was to make sure that our projects that we've got in various different locations remain funded, remain active, and remain successful, literally at any cost. That was kind of the whole point. And in terms of that, I think it's fair to say it was an enormous success if we look back over the last 12 months, particularly with the two main projects that we've got going in two separate locations, we're in a situation where we're in growth phase as opposed to just survival mode. And it's been such a crazy journey, but it's been so fun at the same time. Now, to give you some updates, I guess specifically on those projects, on the work that we've been doing, we've got two that are most notable. So there is one in Bintan in the Rio Archipelago, which is this absolutely beautiful location. It's a rural island location when you consider it in its geography internally within Indonesia. It's home to one of the kind of Indonesia's largest marine protected areas. It's over 1.2 million hectares. Now, this place is an area of high ecological significance. It's got dugongs, seagrass meadows, you name it, but it's also got so many environmental issues, from bauxite mining and runoff that's covering the coral reefs, to dredging, to oil pollution, to plastic pollution, which is, it's heartbreaking to see. And that's really our focus. So it's also a tourism destination, and the vast majority of the industry up in the east and the north is heavily kind of reliant on foreign tourists. And being at that point in time, everyone in lockdown, they had no tourists and they were being absolutely decimated. And we realized that there are so many people in need of work in Indonesia in this particular tourist location. So we took a big risk at that point of financial uncertainty, and we actually employed 22 people from the kind of tourism sector to do environmental cleanups, to start rallying communities, working with local groups and organizations and communities to start making as much impact as possible around plastic pollution education, but also physically removing plastic from that marine protected area. It was a massive success, and it allowed us to not just up the amount of plastic we've collected tremendously, but also get some real attention internationally. And thanks to a massive partnership with Microsoft this year, we're actually taking this to the next level. And this is why I say we're in this period of growth, because we're in a transition from purely environmental collection through to physically building infrastructure, waste management infrastructure, specifically targeting plastics, so that we can stop plastic leaking into the environment in the first place. We're actually going to be building what's called a materials recovery facility, which is the first step on waste management. It's aggregation. How do we collect the plastic and process it for recycling? This is going to allow us to work with the coastal communities, the Orang Laut communities, and people further afield to aggregate their plastic, as well as, of course, all the plastic we continue to get directly from the ocean, and actually process that for recycling, which, believe it or not, has never been possible in Bintan because they don't have any infrastructure for plastic recycling yet. And that's really what we're here to change. So big things happening this year. Watch this space for the Bintan team. It's going to be mega. I wish we could get over there, to be honest. The second project is the one I get most excited about, I think, because it's just kind of wild how it even exists. About a year ago, other river plastic recovery systems were just coming onto the market, and it was such a good idea. We're looking at these systems, and they've realized that 70% of all ocean plastic is getting there via a river. So if you want to tackle the system downstream, where better to start than a river, where you can build some infrastructure, leave it there, and quite literally let the natural flow of the river just deliver you the waste that you can collect, and infinitely, indefinitely stop it from reaching the ocean. So we got together. It was kind of embarrassing in the early days. I don't know whether anybody really knows this story, but there was Ben, myself, a good friend of ours that's a naval engineer, and an engineer from Dyson who kind of joined in the early stages, and we brainstormed this idea to build a system that is a fraction of the cost of the alternatives on the market, that could be so applicable to the ASEAN region and developing countries where these municipalities just don't have the big budgets that maybe European countries do for large infrastructure projects. Sorry, and we decided to run with this and pursue it and design it against all the odds, and against common sense and better judgment, to be honest, if I'm being honest. And then we actually got picked up then by one of our connections at Marina Bay Sands from the sustainability department, who was like, I love what you're doing. we've got a fund that, we give donations to water-based charities. And we want to back you. We want you to develop this technology. And they gave us a large grant, and together with my friend's company, Longitude Engineering, who just so happened to be one of the world leaders in flotsam capture technology, we designed our river plastic recovery system. Now, that's not the end of the story, because designing something and actually having the funds and the mechanism and the network to implement it is a completely separate thing. And I'm happy to share that actually Howden Group Holdings, who are absolute legends in our eyes, they've come to the table with a very sizable amount of money so that we can physically build our first system this year. Now, in terms of where we're putting it, COVID have thrown a few roadblocks in our face, but nothing we've not seen before. It's COVID. Yeah. We're not new to this. And, we've been looking at a few different locations, and thanks to Eka Family Foundation, one of our other very close partners, we're pulling together a conglomerate of organizations to actually make the project a reality in Thailand later this year. So it's going to be amazing. It's going to be in Thailand. It's a pilot system where we're going to be testing the technology and something much more exciting, which I can't tell you about just yet, in terms of how we're going to scale up the system across thousands of rivers in the years to come. But yeah, massive movement on the project side of things. So I think a lot of people see us on our Instagram, and probably me just ranting on LinkedIn, and they don't really know what we're up to on the back end. But our goal at 7 Clean Seas, our primary goal, no matter what, is to build projects that stop plastic leaking into the ocean. And if we're too late, then let's build projects that collect them at the same time. We can do both simultaneously. Now, that's the project side of things, but Ben alluded to earlier that we're yellow. And if any of you have known us for more than a year, we didn't used to be yellow. Like everybody else in the space of ocean cleanup, we were blue, and we liked it because the sea's blue, so we're blue.
Makes sense.
Kind of makes sense, right? But apparently, one of my friends who worked at a very edgy London design studio called 20 something disagreed and was like, Tom, 7 Clean Seas needs to be different. They got to be bold, they got to be loud, and they got to make sustainability cool. Because what's the point in sustainability just being for the people who are into sustainability? We have to make sustainability mainstream. And for anybody that has been through a rebrand, like, you know what I'm talking about here, but like for anyone going to go through a rebrand, good luck.
It was a stressful time. It was a stressful time. It was a lot of consoling Tom about some of the ideas that they'd come up with and were going through.
Yeah, it's like somebody coming and telling you your baby's ugly and they've got to change its face. Like it's a tough thing to come to terms with. And then just good luck, because like I loved the 7 Clean Seas brand. I loved the blue. I loved it so much. And they dragged us kicking and screaming, and we've had nothing but good feedback. I genuinely love the new brand. I hope you love it too. And this is going to make us stand out amongst a sea of blue moving forward. In terms of the team, next major update. So it started out 7 Clean Seas, if none of you know, kind of my wife and I doing beach cleanups in Singapore. And, when we started to lay down real foundations for a growth forward, we needed a co-founder, and Ben joined us at that point as co-founder of 7 Clean Seas, and it was possibly the best move we have ever made. We wouldn't have been able to achieve half of what we've made. I could have chosen someone other than Ben, but but no, honestly, it was fantastic, and Ben has really kind of helped propel the business to where we are today, or the organization rather, and we're now in a situation where we've grown the team. We've hired Trisha, our head of communications and partnerships. She's an absolute communications ninja. She's ex-WWF. She's ex-Green is the New Black, and she's done some great things, and she's doing even more great things. I'm excited to see where that side of the organization goes. And then we also hired Ollie, who weirdly enough grew up with Ben. Very strange set of circumstances, but he is an environmental engineer. He's been working with the European Commission. He's got a master's in environmental engineering, and he's joined the team as sustainability specialist so that we can really build out a consultation side of the business and really help our partners not just give money to good causes or look at their plastic footprints, but actually genuinely make positive change, because the aim of the game is sustainability long term. Now, in terms of the team in Singapore, that's what's happened, but the team in Indonesia, we actually hired Siti, who is our our general manager, and also our main player in the project over there. She is ex-WWF Indonesia. I promise WWF, we're not just trying to steal all your ex-staff, but we did get 2 good ones. And yeah, she's incredible. She's going to be building up the project in Indonesia, overseeing everything. And yeah, you'll get to meet her later today in one of the talks that's going to be completely in Bahasa Indonesian. So I'm sorry if you're not Indonesian. I don't speak Bahasa either, but I will be getting it translated. But if you're into it, check it out. In terms of, I guess, wrapping up my little self-proclaimed monologue, I guess, I'm going to finish on a high for things that we're really proud of. Now, the first thing is, getting feedback of the work we're doing, and there's no better way to get that feedback than through awards. And there's been a few things that have really stood out. Now, we won, or we got onto as a finalist, the United Nations Development Programme EPIC Incubator, looking at solutions for plastic pollution in Ha Long Bay, which was amazing at the tail end of last year. And then one of the things I'm most proud about is recently the United Nations Environmental Programme, they have a division called Sea Circular. And Sea Circular have actually published a case study on 7 Clean Seas' best practice for sustainable funding mechanisms for ocean cleanup and waste management infrastructure investment.
Really exciting.
And that is, the United Nations have made a case study on this. Like, how does that even happen? It's insane. Here in Singapore, we won the British Chamber of Commerce Sustainability Champion of the Year award last year, which was we were over the moon with. And it's been a little bit overshadowed now. I'm sorry, Brit Cham, I love you, but we've recently won the best thing ever in my mind, which is the United Nations World Tourism Organization Global Startup Champion, looking at SDG 14, which is life below water. And the reason I'm so pumped with this particular award is because not just it's another UN award, but there was 10,000 applicants globally from all around the world, and somehow we won for life below water.
Yeah.
Enormous.
That was a massive achievement.
To wrap up, I'd just like to say the biggest update we have is obviously our impact. What have we achieved when it comes to ocean plastic pollution? Since starting less than 3 years ago on a shoestring budget, a dodgy startup with no investors and no major donors for a long time, I'm happy to announce that we've actually been able to recover 149,808 kilograms of ocean plastic as of yesterday. And it's just rocketing. Yeah. If this was a graph, it's an exponential curve, and
absolutely
big things coming.
Especially now, as we kind of scale up that project, we'll be seeing more and more plastic, and especially marine plastic, collected from over in Rio Archipelago, and then with our river plastic recovery system, which Tom touched on a little bit. Now, we've spoken about us, and we've spoken about kind of where we've gone, but we've had fantastic news and some kind of lowlights and also highlights in the news from last year, and some headlines. Some mentioning the Minderoo Foundation coming up with their Plastic Waste Makers Index, which was kind of rocks the world with the big oil and the kind of big plastic producers, as they were called out within that study. Then we've seen kind of plastics companies committing almost 3 million to making virgin plastics, despite their green pledges. The UK and their scandal with plastic waste, shipping it and exporting it to Turkey. Now, this isn't just within the UK, but this is multiple countries around the world exporting and trading plastic waste out of their country, which has also been a huge scandal. We've seen Seaspiracy release rock the sustainability world, against the fishing industry. But then also we've seen some implications with kind of plastics and how people are viewing plastics now as well, which we'll definitely touch on in just a moment. And finally, we've actually seen a fantastic study been released by the Pew Charity Trust, breaking a plastics wave, which will also touch on some of our favorite facts from that as well. But just before we get into all of that and kind of touching on those subjects, one thing that's kind of rocked our world within plastics, and we have journalists dropping into our inbox, for the past kind of 12 months asking about this, is COVID in plastic production. Now, from Wuhan to New York, we've seen an increase in face shields, an increase in kind of, potential increase in takeaway containers, and people saying they're seeing more plastic for gloves and kind of single-use gloves on the floor and PPE in general. But just to summarize that and really get amongst that, have we seen an increase in PPE on the beaches?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and we genuinely get this question all the time from journalists. And on one hand, we never used to see PPE prior to COVID. It was very rare. You get the occasional syringe, which obviously is horrible within itself, but it was fairly rare. And if we look at kind of the situation today, we are getting PPE. We're getting a lot of masks. We're getting more syringes, which is very worrying, amongst plastic gloves and latex gloves and other various different things washing up. And, there is definitely an increase in that. And I do believe that it is now just a new classification of ocean plastic. At the same time as saying that, like, we also have to realize that it's difficult for us to give definitive answers on these things, because we have to wait for the science to demonstrate that this is actually not just like anecdotal evidence from where we're operating, but a global issue. And although there is so many people looking at this on a research perspective at the moment, nothing is published, nothing is peer reviewed. So we cannot say with certainty that kind of it is an enormous new threat that we're facing. It feels like that. We're seeing the anecdotal evidence.
We're seeing the leakage into the environment, and more masks on the streets, for instance.
And more people are using it, and I don't think COVID's going away anytime soon, and there will be a legacy of PPE even after COVID, I believe. So I think we've got to live with this to some level of, to some extent. But I genuinely hope that our intuition is wrong, and that the research shows that actually it's only nothing's insignificant when it's ocean plastic, but an insignificant volume increase compared to what it was before.
No, absolutely. And I think especially kind of with you can always do extrapolations and guess how many plastic masks are being used, but you never can really get that definitive number. So, one could assume that it's increased, but at the same time, we need to kind of really wait for that evidence to come out as well. But one thing that is interesting is more people have been doing takeaway. So the Reuters article that I was referring to, and multiple other articles as well, have said that kind of takeaway containers and takeaway plastics and single-use plastics has been increasing. But multiple countries throughout this year have been banning single-use plastics. Africa has banned a lot of single-use plastic. Multiple African countries banned single-use plastic. UK has especially banned single-use plastic. And then also kind of Thailand has looked at single-use plastic bans as well. Now, looking at decentivizing that single-use culture is absolutely fantastic. And these countries are making commitments and kind of strides towards plastic in their production as well. But kind of what do you think about these single-use plastic kind of bans coming out, and also then policies? How do you feel about countries working towards this kind of anti-consumption on plastics?
I mean, anti-consumption everything, right? It's not just plastic. It's
very true.
The greenhouse gas emissions, the food industry for meat eaters and various other things. I think when we're looking at plastic specifically and looking at single-use plastic, it's first important that we define what we consider single-use plastic. So single-use plastic is plastic that you're using one time and throwing away, but we're not talking about medical or healthcare uses. Single-use plastic is actually the reason we live as long as we do. I mean, there's no denying that, but it's also the reason that we've got into this very lazy culture of just use something once, maybe 13 seconds for a plastic bag, and then throw it away, of which many end up in the natural environment, let alone the kind of the GHG emissions that single-use culture is creating as well. So I think it's fair to say that we are so on board with single-use plastic bans, but they need to be done intelligently. They need to be done off the back of science, and we need to look at kind of what are the implications, the second degree implications beyond the plastic being removed from the system.
Exactly. What you're talking about there is kind of policy based off research, basically.
Exactly.
Which is exactly what we need to move towards 100%. Now, touching on the single-use plastics, and that's kind of virgin oil-based plastics, one country has gone above and beyond and then looked to extend the ban to bioplastics. Now, Australia came out in February, I believe it was, on the article banning kind of bioplastics. But why? Why on earth have they kind of banned bioplastics? You came out with a fantastic article, which I'll ask you to touch on as well last year on bioplastics. Well, why is that a bad thing?
So bioplastics at first glance are an amazing thing, right? You're making a plastic, if it's a bio-based plastic, and this is half of the problem, if it's a bio-based plastic, that plastic is made from quite often agricultural byproduct, which would have been wastage anyway. You can keep virgin fossil fuels in the ground and use this waste product to create a polymer, which we can then use. Now, the issue you have is that the landscape of biodegradable plastics is an absolute minefield.
It is confusing.
You've got biodegradable, you've got oxy-biodegradable, you've got compostable, you've got bio-based, and they're actually all different types of things. So biodegradable plastic, it has the word bio in it, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's breaking down into bioorganic substances. A biodegradable plastic by definition can have 5% compostable or plant-based plastic polymers in it and 95% petroleum-based. So all you're going to achieve is the breakdown into microplastics quicker. And microplastic is an issue that is even more difficult to fix than macroplastic. Literally no one even knows how to clean up microplastic at this stage. So let's not incentivize that for a start. And it's completely greenwashing to call something like this bioplastic when we know that the average punter, the average consumer is going to look at that and be like, oh, cool, I can get this and throw it on the floor and it will turn into compost. Now, the other side of it is, or the other types of plastic, and really kind of the only argument for kind of bio-based plastics in my mind is when we're looking at a plastic that is 100% kind of organic matter. So again, byproducts of agriculture, using waste to create polymers. But at the same time, even those solutions are not genuinely compostable by our definition. We'll look at a compostable plastic and we'll be like, yeah, cool, we can just throw it on the floor and it'll rot down like a tomato. That's not going to happen. Actually, what they found is that even compostable plastics, when they're in the natural environment, particularly the ocean where it's cold, it's dark, there's a lack of oxygen when you get deep down. It's not going to break down, and to be able to break down these compostable plastics, they need to have these really unique kind of solutions, and we call them essentially industrial scale composters, where they can put high levels of light, of warmth, of water, of the correct bacteria, and they keep turning it over for 60 days, and you can break down that compostable plastic into its byproducts. And therein lies another issue, is that there is no science proving that the byproducts of compostable plastics are actually harmless. So again, unintended consequences. We cannot be certain that we're not creating some other issues further down the line.
Comes down to research again and understanding the scale of what happens when you scale these.
Exactly.
Is it actually scalable, and can we scale it at the end of the day?
And this is my biggest argument, and I take, just so you know, I'm against bioplastics, and really it's because it's not the material. The material, I'm sure science can get to a place where the material is perfect.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, within a reasonable amount of time. But the fact is, we've had plastic since the 60s. We've been trying to make the plastic infrastructure, so the infrastructure to deal with that plastic, aka recycling infrastructure, since the 60s, and we have failed woefully. The reason 7 Clean Seas exists, the reason there's plastic in the environment, is because the vast majority of plastic is not getting recycled. It's in low double digits. It's in the teens of the global recycling rate for plastics. And if we cannot build infrastructure globally for plastics in, God knows, 60 years, how on earth are we meant to then go and build a whole new set of infrastructures that are unique, just for this brand new material? Yeah, it's just impossible. We're not going to be able to do it in a reasonable time frame, and within that time frame, we're going to create other issues in the environment. So, although it has merit, I think the reality is the world's too big. There's not enough funding. There's not enough investment to pull this off quickly enough. Therefore, we have to walk away from that as a potential solution and actually get to the crux of this issue, which is consumerism and over-consumerism and single-use, kind of the single-use mindset and methodology. That's the problem that we're really fighting.
No, 100%. And I think kind of it is a bold statement from Australia to kind of look at that and ban and to do ban that. Now, we've touched on a lot of sensitive issues, and just kind of as a disclaimer, we have kind of a lot more kind of arguments and points about this. If you do want to bring up anything with us, we're more than happy to chat. Now, one thing, especially just before we kind of wrap up as well, we've seen leaps and bounds in our market, plastic credits. But what on earth has happened since last year? Last year, we sat on a panel discussion with Maggie Lee, Jocelyn Macias from the Incubation Network, Maggie Lee from what was the United Nations Sea Circular, and now she's joined Vera, and then Dan Jordan from the recycling sector. And we did speak about plastic credits as a scalable funding mechanism. But more and more people are starting to look at this, and it's getting really exciting. Yeah. So, I mean, summarizing very, very quickly, because we've done a lot.
Yeah, it's been a lot. I mean, back then, this isn't new to 7 Clean Seas. We've been banging this drum for 3 years now. Yeah. Luckily, we're no longer the only people in line. We've got other people starting to bang the drum and really kind of take note. I think some of the most notable changes within the market is the fact that there are now standards available or coming available very soon, which will give us international certification for our plastic credits, which as soon as you get international certification, it's ultimately scalable, because that's when all the big brands, the big organizations can buy into this, because it will pass their compliance checks. Yeah. So it unlocks a whole new layer of scalability within the market. The United Nations Environmental Programme case study I was talking about earlier is how we are structuring our plastic crediting solution in the most ethical way possible. And really, we're going to see moving forward like an influx of players in this market. Mm-hmm. And I'll be completely honest. I'm not going to sit here and say that there won't be some people in there providing plastic credits that maybe are not up to the standards that we deem acceptable for various different reasons. Yeah. And really, I think we have a role to play. 7 Clean Seas as one of the original movers in this market to really try and help and guide the market down the road of maximum efficacy. And what I mean by that is the understanding that it's not just an environmental problem, it's a social problem. What is the point in cleaning the oceans if it comes at a human cost? We have to help these communities. We've got to help these communities that are in these coastal communities wherever possible from a socioeconomic standpoint, if we ever want to fix ocean plastic pollution, because the two are just intrinsically linked.
That's a very good point as well, and that's the same with the bioplastics and kind of the mass scale out of single-use plastics. It's that thing of scale, and at scale, how is it going to be abused? And that's what really thinking about that is really interesting, and understanding and making sure that you have that from the start, and you have core ethics to really make sure that you're keeping everything in line and keeping the market in line as a whole in general as well.
There needs to be a rule book.
There needs to be a rule book.
But there isn't, because it's a free market. Yeah. And anyone can come and, within the realms of the certification requirements, they can get certified. So for us, it's a case of be premium, do it the best way. It's not easy, it's the difficult way. It's not cheap, it's the expensive way. But it's the morally ethical way, in our opinion.
Very true. Yeah. Very, very true. But within the next year as well, we're excited to see kind of where the plastics credit market as a whole goes. We're excited to see potentially, and fingers crossed, hopefully maybe it's this year, when a good bioplastics innovation comes out and it's scalable. We hope so. You never know. You never know. It could be just a flick of the switch and all of a sudden it's out there and everything. But just to wrap up, because it has been Wake Up with Tom and Ben. Tom, when we revisit this discussion next year, which is going to be really exciting, we're going to sit down and we'll look back over this one. What are your predictions within the next year? Just one or two predictions.
So my predictions, first of all, is that ocean plastic pollution as a topic of discussion, as an area of passion for people all around the world, is only going to grow. We've seen this now steadily from 2017. There's people going way back beyond that, but really it picked up pace in 2017.
It went mainstream, I think.
It
became cool.
It became cool, and that's what you need, because then it gets in front of people who aren't necessarily environmentalists. So I think we're going to see a continuation of the importance of this market and the advocacy around this market. We're also going to see a lot of, I think, and I might be wrong on this, I think some of the oil producers are going to react to the Minderoo and the Minderoo report that basically called them out as the biggest plastic producers. If they don't react, then certainly the banks that are backing them, that were also called out, are I think they will pull out. Just like we saw an exit from coal, from the investment money, I think we'll see an exit from plastic in the next 4 months.
Interesting for us,
I also do believe that plastic offsetting in its current form is going to hit mainstream this year. Next year, by next June, which is a fantastic thing, because it's just going to unlock infinite levels of funding for projects all around the world that will make real impact on ocean plastic pollution. But at the same time, I do believe there is going to be more than one controversial plastic neutral FMCG companies.
That's a bold claim.
That's a bold
an interesting claim. I'm
And-
excited to see actually whether that does kind of take place.
I mean, just so you know where we stand, I never want to see a plastic neutral FMCG company unless they're making actual leaps and bounds in the reduction of their plastic in their
Very
packaging.
true. Very true.
And yeah, we'll see how it goes. I think by this time next year, by 7 Clean Seas, we'll have recovered 5-fold, maybe 10-fold what we've already collected. We're going to have a river cleanup system in a river in Thailand, potentially one in Vietnam as well. We're going to have a project in Bintan, but also 2 other locations throughout Southeast Asia. And if things carry on as they carry on, as they have been carrying on this last 12 months.
The trajectory that we're on.
Yeah, and we get more corporate partners who believe in what we're doing. We get more clients who want to offset their plastic footprints on the environment. And we get more organizations that want to understand how much plastic they're using and how they can actually reduce that as a primary goal. You know, the only way is up for 7 Clean Seas. I really do hope that. And one day that's all going to come crashing down. I don't think it's going to be next year, but when it's all fixed, when it's all done and there's no more plastic in the ocean, then we'll be out of business. And that's the day we'll celebrate. But that's a prediction of something that unfortunately I don't think will happen in the next 12 months.
Well, look, I mean, for the next year, and when we revisit this conversation, we'll revisit those predictions that you made and see how they kind of progress throughout this year as well. But you've been with Tom and Ben on Wake Up for World Ocean Day. Again, happy World Ocean Day from 7 Clean Seas. We'll be wrapping up and we'll be live all day. If you've got any questions on the kind of points that we discussed or anything like that, please feel free to drop us an email. Thank you, firstly, to all our partners and our clients for making 7 Clean Seas what it is today and this World Ocean Day. And thank you so much for tuning in and listening. If you're listening to this on a pre-recorded, requisite, then again, feel free to drop any questions in our email or in the chat box and we'll get back to you as soon as we possibly can.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Honestly, you're legends. Thanks for tuning in. It's been great. We'll see you soon.